back to the Whatever Works podcast. It's been a little bit. I took a tiny bit of a hiatus. I was struggling with my mental health for a little bit there, and I think I still kind of am, but I am slowly coming out of it. And I wanted to share my experience with mental health and kind of what it's like to be me. And this isn't for I don't want pity. I don't want people to feel bad for me. I just think that I want more people to understand what it's like to struggle with poor mental health. And a big part of why I wanted to start this podcast was to share my mental health journey, but also talking openly about mental health disorders and ways that you can get help and stuff like that. So I wanted to share my story about my mental health journey up until this point, because I think it is a really, really big part of who I am. And yeah, I think it's going to be very cathartic for me to share that with you guys. First and foremost, I would like to say that mental health is a spectrum. There is positive mental health and there is negative mental health. There are a lot of people who have positive mental health. They are ultimately positive people. They're resilient people who are not so susceptible to negative emotions, and I think that's great. So when we're using the term mental health, I want us to realize that mental health isn't solely a negative thing. Mental health can be positive and it can be negative. So when people say, I'm struggling with mental health, that's kind of like an incomplete sentence. Struggling with positive mental health. Well, I guess struggling kind of says that it's negative, but mental health doesn't mean depression. Mental health doesn't mean suicidality. Mental health is a spectrum, and I think that's very important for people to understand. And it's not something to be ashamed of. It's something that I think the world is getting very open about. They're becoming, I feel like in the side of wokeness, we're being very open to mental health struggles and stuff like that. And I also think in the same breath, we're being a little too casual about the struggles that people experience every day. And we're using terms a little too casually, including myself. As I continue my education in my psychology bachelor's degree, and as I prep for grad school in clinical mental health counseling, I want to be more aware of the words that I use and making sure the terms that I'm using are accurate and appropriate. If I jump back to kind of the beginning of where this journey of wanting to be a therapist, caring about psychology, understanding mental health as a spectrum, I can go all the way back into probably junior high. My older brother has bipolar type 2 disorder, and he was not diagnosed until he was, I think, in his late teens, early 20s. And throughout my childhood, he struggled a lot. I don't want to share too much about his story because that is his story, and I don't want to cross any boundaries, but he did have a very difficult childhood without being diagnosed. And there were moments where he was admitted into psychiatric care to get the help that he needed, and it opened my eyes to that world of suicidal ideation, suicide attempts, suicidality that I just didn't really understand. And to be fair, I was 13 or 14 years old, so I was still really young. And then my younger sister started to struggle with the same thing, probably within a couple of years of my brother, and she was also admitted into psychiatric care one or two times, and it really opened that door of just depression, anxiety, self-harm, and stuff like that I genuinely don't think I had any idea existed before. It was very hard to watch people that I love struggle so much with wanting to be alive. And some of it was situational, the environment, bullying, abuse, and stuff like that they were experiencing. And a lot of it is genetic. My mom's side of the family has a lot of mental health disorders, such as, bipolar disorder, depression, anxiety. There's a lot of generational abuse in various forms that have caused situational depression and stuff like that, PTSD. And I think a lot of it was inherited. I think a lot of it was given to us genetically. But for myself, I was a pretty happy kid. I think I saw what was going on in my home and chose to be as little of a burden as I possibly could. And for myself, I never really felt like I had experienced depression or a ton of anxiety. I think there's normal phases of depression, a lot of sadness and anxiety about school or about friends, stuff like that definitely happens to everyone and happened to me. But I don't think I really struggled with negative mental illness or mental illness in general or negative mental health until my mission. And so I obviously knew what the world of depression and the world of suicidal ideation and self-harm was because of my siblings' experiences. And when I was in high school or junior high, my freshman year, I actually joined the Hope Squad, which is Utah's. Actually, I wanna get this right. I wanna say this correctly. But it is a suicide prevention and awareness group that for youth here in Utah that began here in Utah. And it's called Hope Squad. Hope stands for something. Let me find it. It's been a long time. I'll tell you that much for free. From what I remember and from what I saw, Hope Squad is a suicide prevention group that began here in Utah, began in Provo, and has spread out throughout the different districts and counties here in Utah. And I lived in Davis County, and it started in my junior high, and I had just began experiencing through my siblings what it's like to see suicide attempts and suicidality, suicidal ideation. And so my counselor actually recommended that I join the group, and I was open to it, and I began doing it, and I really loved it. I joined the group, and basically what you do is you meet as a group, and you learn about suicide prevention. You learn about the warning signs for suicidal ideation or suicide attempts, if someone's going to attempt suicide, and you go and teach it to elementary school or junior high or high school. And so I started doing that in junior high, and I loved it. I had so much fun doing it. I loved learning about mental health. I loved learning about how to help people and the warning signs. And when I went to high school, I continued in the group, but they actually asked me to be the president of the group. And I was so stoked. I was so excited. I took it very seriously. It was something that I loved doing, and I loved having a group. I loved prepping for it. I loved doing the school activities. I loved going to the junior highs and the elementaries and doing presentations about understanding mental health, about understanding suicide, how to prevent it, how to ask for help, where to get resources and stuff like that. It was such an incredible opportunity. Obviously, when you're 15, 16, 17, your friends all think it's stupid. And I lived in the era of using the term I'm going to kill myself at any inconvenience. And I was a stickler about it in high school. I hated my friends doing it. And they said it around me, especially because they knew it bugged me. I don't think they understood that I had siblings who had attempted suicide multiple times in my home, and that was actually a really difficult thing for me to hear and to experience. But I held my head high, and I just really loved it. It was a really, really incredible experience, and I hope that at least one person of all those presentations that I gave felt something. And it was actually really cool because I had a lot of people from my high school who you wouldn't have expected, the popular people, come up and talk to me about how they were struggling and how they felt like they couldn't say anything, but how even like the post-it notes we would leave around school or the activities that we would do that no one would participate in unless we had treats, like that helped them feel like there was another choice. And that was a really beautiful thing, and I think it really connected me immediately to the world of mental health and psychology. I then, I graduated high school and I started my first semester at Dixie over in St. George, and I was going to school to be an athletic trainer. So I was on a completely different route. It was very sciencey, very medical based. But I was mostly working on like general education stuff. But like everything I was doing was gearing me towards that athletic training education. And while I was down there, I randomly got a job at a residential treatment facility. I had no idea what I was signing up for. I had no idea what a residential treatment facility was. But I saw an application for it and it said helping take care of girls. And I was like, I was on the Hope Squad. I love taking care of people. I'm going to do this. So I ended up working at Sunrise Residential Treatment Center in St. George, and it fucked me up real good. That was so hard for me at my little 18-year-old self, 19-year-old self, being around these girls who were a year or two younger than me, struggling deeply with mental health issues, mental illnesses, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, constant suicide attempts, active self-harm, drug abuse, sexual abuse. I had no fucking idea what I was doing, but I learned so much at that job. And I feel a little bit bad because I definitely wasn't at any time I worked in RTC, I was not at my best. I think if I went there now, I would know how to help and I would be a very great mentor. But for my own mental health, I would never go back. But I'm really grateful to have had the opportunities to go and work in these facilities to help out the best that I knew to, and as much as I could. I connected with a lot of girls, and I created a lot of really great relationships. But working in that job solidified that I was not on a path educationally and career-wise that I wanted. As soon as I finished that job and finished that semester of school, I knew that I wanted to switch my major to psychology and that I wanted to be a therapist. I ended up going on a mission, and obviously school paused and my plans for education and stuff paused. I knew I wanted that to change, but I first was going to serve a mission and then I would come back to that. And so I kind of thought like this idea of like mental health and all these different things would just pause as I went on my mission. I wasn't anticipating anything to happen. And about 6 months into my mission, I was struggling really, really badly with my mental health, which I had never dealt with before. I like I had mentioned before, I have always been like the positive girl. I'm a little mean. I've always been bitchy, very bossy and very sassy, but I never really struggled, in my opinion, with like depression or major anxiety. But something about this stage of my life triggered what I knew was going to happen, and I fell into a very deep depression on my mission. I remember having a specific zone conference. I had been struggling a little bit with my companion, who is my best friend. Like, she was one of my favorite companions and she's my best friend, but we were so similar that it was kind of hard sometimes. But we had just had a really hard week, and then we had zone conference, and the area presidency member who came to speak with us was very mean. I did not like him at all. And again, I was struggling, but I had no idea what was happening. I didn't understand why I was so sad, why everything felt so personal. And I remember looking at one of my friends, he was an AP at the time, and I was sobbing my eyes out, and everyone was laughing because this guy was this area presidency member, this member of the 70 of the church, a very high member, was joking around about how we present ourselves and how we need to be better. But I was already criticizing myself so much to be a perfect missionary that everything he was saying was it felt like he was talking specifically to me. And obviously not everything's about me, but it felt so personal. But also there was like this aspect of like something's not clicking in my head. Like I just can't find a reason to be okay. And anyway, I look at my friend and he's like, what is wrong? And I was like, I just shrugged. I was like, I don't know. And I started sobbing. And I went throughout the zone conference. My companion and I were fighting and we were very angry at each other. And we go home, and you're not supposed to do this, but I got my phone and I went outside onto the balcony and I called the APs because I was like, I need help, and he's my friend and he's a mission leader, so he's supposed to help me. And his companion was there, so it's not like we were having like an inappropriate conversation, but I definitely should have been with my companion. And I was on the balcony and I was crying and I was saying, Elder, like, I'm not okay. I'm really struggling. Something is wrong. I am so sad. Nothing feels right. And I had a really hard time when I first went on my mission, and I turnaround trained, which means right after I was done training, I trained a new missionary, and that was really, really hard. It pushed me past my limits. It was not a good experience. But then when I came with the companion I was at the moment, I loved it. I loved working and I loved my companion. We were having such a good time, but I was so sad and I was so miserable, and I was telling this elder, I was like, I'm really, really struggling and I don't know what to do. And I can't really remember what he said, but I know that was like the first time I recognized that something wasn't okay. And my companion and I, because we had been fighting, I tried to explain to her, again, I hold no negativity towards my companions or towards any of the mission leaders when it comes to my depression. On my mission, we were all kids, and this is a really deep and heavy topic, so I didn't expect them, I now don't expect them to like have understand what I was going through. But my companion, I tried to explain to her, I was like, she's like, why are you on the phone without me, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I'm struggling and I don't know what's wrong. And she was like, you need to talk to me about this, and blah, blah, blah. And I just, because we had been fighting, I didn't feel comfortable telling her. And I don't know, that was the beginning of what ended up being a really hard 6 months. We had transfers like maybe a week or two after that, not too long after that, and I was given a new companion, and it was really hard to say goodbye to my companion that I was with. She was one of my best friends. She still is a really good friend of mine. And then I got my new companion, who I called Sister Companion, because I did not like her last name. I was such a bitch. I will talk about my mission in a different episode. I think that'd be really funny. But Sister Companion, bless her soul, things just hit the fan once that transfer started. I was so sad. I was so depressed. And I met with the mission nurse, and she was like, let's get you to meet with one of the counselors. And so I met with a counselor. I was in Illinois at the time, and she fucking hated missionaries, and she did not fucking care about her job. She didn't say anything nice or anything positive to me. She was very rude and dismissive of what I was going through. And as someone who has studied psychology, as someone who's worked in the field of helping people, she did not fucking care about her life or mine. She did not care about my life. She did not care about me succeeding. She's a bitch, and I hope she is not working in that field anymore. So maybe I do hold grudges, but she was evil. And I told my mission nurse, I was like, I need someone else. I need someone new. And the only other option they had was a man, and I was so against that. But I was like, I don't even care. Get me someone different. So I started meeting with a counselor, and he was really great. He was so kind. And I was having therapy, essentially, counseling once a week for about an hour. And it was very spiritual. It's very, like, doctrine-based about the gospel. It's nothing I would ever do now. But as a missionary, it's very helpful. But it wasn't enough. And I was still really struggling to get out of bed. I was really struggling to go and do things. So I went and made a doctor's appointment, and I met with a doctor in Illinois, and he prescribed me antidepressants. And he put me, I actually was on what I'm on now, but a significantly higher dose than I am on now. And so he put me on Effexor, and he put me on 150 milligrams. That is fucking crazy. I'm on 107 milligrams right now, and I've built up to this dosage. I had never experienced suicidality or like wanting to self-harm until I was on that medication. I woke up, took my meds, and I was fucking blasted. I was so hyped. I was so ready for the day because we got up at like 6:30 in the morning. And by like 1 or 2, I wanted to kill myself. I was so miserable. I was so sad. I was having the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. I genuinely cannot remember, not only because it's been like 6 or 7 years, but because I was hopped up on drugs. I cannot remember so many things from that phase of my mission. And it was around Christmas time, and I would be in the shower and I would think about like hurting myself. And it happened so often that one day I almost did. I almost hurt myself. And I'd seen my siblings go through the same thing, and I knew I would never do that to myself. So I knew that something was wrong. And I got out of the shower and I went into my room and I was like, Sister Companion, something's not right. I'm not okay. I'm thinking about hurting myself. Like I don't want to be alive. And she was like, bless her heart, I love her so much. She was like, okay, we need to call the mission nurse right now. She was so strong and so kind and so patient with me during that time. I had constant counseling appointments. I had constant doctor's appointments. We could not work a lot. But she was so understanding of what was happening. I'm so grateful for her to this day, for everything she did for me as a missionary. And I was technically the senior companion, and she was still learning. She had just finished training. I think she was on her 3rd or 4th transfer, so she was still really new, but she was such like a kind and beautiful companion to have at this time. But she like immediately called up the mission nurse, and my mission nurse was like, you need to call, like, it was like around Christmas time, so most doctors are not in their office. I called like the PA or the nurse or whatever, and I told her what was happening, and she was like, you need to get off your meds. She was like, just stop the meds altogether. I think that's the best option. You don't fucking do that, especially when you're on that high of a dose of such a strong medication. But I immediately stopped taking the medication. Christmas came and went, and probably the day after Christmas or 2 days after Christmas, I was losing my fucking mind. I was shaking. I was sensitive to light. I was throwing up. I couldn't get out of bed. I was miserable for days. And I had no idea what was wrong with me. And I remember at the time, I thought God was punishing me for not working hard enough or for not being a good enough missionary. I feel so bad for 19-year-old Mercy at this time. She was really, really struggling. And I was in bed for days, and I could not leave. I was dizzy. If I got up, I was dizzy. I didn't eat. All I did was sleep, and we had to put a blanket over our window because even with the blinds shut, like, that was too much light. And after the weekend had passed, as a missionary, you can, like, you're supposed to email your mission president every week. And you can, at least for me, on my mission during that time, you marked a little box as urgent if it was urgent, or if it wasn't urgent, you just like sent it. So it was basically like priority of like what the mission president should read. And I wrote my mission president this email and was like, I need to go home. I am struggling. I am not okay. Everything is bad. I hate my mission. I'm not good enough. Everything is horrible. Please send me home. Marked it urgent and press send. And obviously I'd been in contact with the mission nurse while I was sick and what was happening. And she was like, as soon as you're able to leave the house, I want you to go back to the doctors. And I was like, okay. So I called and made an appointment for Monday. Monday was P day. So, that's like our break day where we like email our family, do grocery shopping and stuff like that, and hang out with the other missionaries. And we don't have to like work until the evening. So Monday's P day, I'd been given a blessing by the elders in my area. They had to come into my house because I quite literally could not move. As soon as they got to the house, I like came out of my room, sat on the chair. They gave me a blessing. Such a beautiful blessing. So cool. I wrote it down in my mission journal. I love those elders. Not close friends of mine, but still people I keep in contact. They're very lovely. And as soon as they were done, I had to go back to my room because it was like too much light, too much stimulation. But whether that was Saturday or Sunday, I don't know. But Monday I go to the doctor and I was feeling a little bit better. I had been sick for probably 3 or 4 days at this point, and I was meeting with a new doctor, and she had specialized in prescriptions for mental illness. And I go and I told her what I was going through, that I was put on the Effexor 150 milligrams, that I was taken off, and what had happened. And she was like, Mercedes, and it was really cool to not be called Sister Casanova for like the first time in a year. She's like, Mercedes, you were going through withdrawals. She was like, you were put on way too high of a dose and you were taken off way too fast. She's like, I have clients or patients who go, and I'll never forget this. I have a patient who's on this medication. She has bipolar disorder. And when she chooses to go off of it, she goes to the woods to detox because of she starts to hallucinate. She's like, you should not have been put on this medication and you should not have been taken off of this medication. And I looked at my companion, sister companion, and I just started laughing. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, I'm not crazy. I'm not being punished. Like, by God, I was like, I was going through withdrawals. And she was like, I'm so sorry that you had to go through that. That should not have happened. She actually got in contact with my mission nurse to talk about that, just to educate her more on like what to do in those situations. She was a really great doctor. I wish I knew her name. I'm sure it's written down, but she was incredible. And she's like, we're going to start you on this. I can't remember what medication it was. And she started me on like the lowest dosage. She's like, we're going to build this up. This is going to help you. And she like taught me about like the synapses and like how things work in my brain. I hadn't done no school, so I had no fucking idea what she was talking about. She was so smart. But I remember leaving the doctor's office, looking at my companion, and I was like, I'm going to be okay. She was like, you're going to be okay. Oh my God. I love this companion so much. She was so beautiful. I'm so grateful for her. But I felt like so relieved because I was like, I'm not crazy and I'm not being punished. Like, it was just like a lot of misinformation given to me. And I was like, I need to call the mission president because I was like, I don't want to go home. I want to keep being a missionary. And right as I was about to call my mission president, he called me. He was like, Sister Casanova, I just read your email. Tell me what's going on. What's happening? And I was like, President, I don't want to go home. This is what was happening. I was put on this medication. I've been doing counseling. They took me off and I was going through withdrawals. Like, I don't want to go home. I love being a missionary. I want to stick it out. And he was like, Sister Casanova, I trust you. I know you. I know you love being a missionary, but I also know it's hard. So I want you to be really honest with me if this keeps being hard because I want you to take care of yourself. And I was like, I will. I promise. I have faith that it's going to be okay. And he was like, okay, keep in touch. So that was my first transfer with that, which is 6 weeks, with that sister companion. And it was fucking insane. And it was so hard. And then the second transfer, I'm on new meds and I'm figuring it out. And I feel so much better. I finished counseling because I felt like I had my ground set. So this is like 12 weeks of like 2 transfers. This is when this is all happening, and it really felt secure. We had found meds that made me feel good, that I felt confident on. I finally felt like a person again. I felt like a missionary, and I was happy. And so when the transfer ended, first of all, I'm going to say this again, so grateful for that companion. So grateful. I shared an apartment with 2 other Spanish sisters, and they were so great and so lovely. This was such like a beautiful time of my life, and for as difficult as it was to go through that as a missionary, I can't imagine doing that, like, not as a missionary. There was so much faith, and there was so much trust in God and in our missionary work that, like, I am just so grateful that I had that experience on a mission, even though sometimes I'm like, I wish I was at home doing that. Like, I wouldn't have had the stability if I wasn't doing that as a missionary. Anyway, next transfer comes. I get called to a Spanish area. I get to be in Hermana. I'm so fucking excited. I'm so happy, and I'm stoked for this last 6 months of my mission. I get there, and I'm ready to hit the ground running. I'm so excited to learn more Spanish. I know a little bit of Spanish, but to know like missionary Spanish, gospel Spanish, and do all this stuff. And I got 6 weeks of that before COVID hit, and I got sent home. And they told me, I think on Monday, I got the call from my mission president that there was a global pandemic and that I think it's called Mission Medical, basically like the medical staff for the church, for missionaries, said that they need to send home missionaries who are struggling with, who have like, any respiratory disease, like asthma or anything like that, and any missionaries who were struggling with their mental health, because they were about to shut down everything and the missionaries were going to be trapped in their home. And I had loved my area. I was in this tiny area called Perry, Iowa. My best friend, Emmy Cameron, we served the same mission. I don't know if I mentioned that. She was my sister training leader. My MTC comp was in the zone that we were in. One of the sisters from my last area was Emmy's companion. So I had like all of my friends there, and I was loving life. I was loving being a missionary. And my mission president called me and he was like, Sister Casanova, they're saying we have to send home missionaries within these like criterias. I know you've been struggling with your mental health. How do you feel now? Do you think you can stay? And I was like, President, I want to, and this was actually, he let me leave my companion for this specific conversation. And I was like, President Sturr, I'm like, I'm really happy being a missionary. I'm really happy where I'm at right now. But I trust you, and I don't feel like I can say yes or no right now. He's like, you don't have to, but I want you to think about it. And I was like, I would also like you to think about it because I trust you as my mission president. And he's like, okay. And then like a day later, we have a mission-wide conference call, which is crazy. Mission-wide. So we have like phones to phones meeting across the state of Iowa and Illinois. And my mission president tells us about COVID, because we're missionaries. We're so out of touch with the news. Tells us about COVID and says, if you fall in within these criteria, you're being sent home. And that's also like elders who were over 21 months, sisters who were over like 16 months, like 15 or 16 months. I was at 13 months. And he was like, we need to get as many missionaries home because everybody who's out of the country who can stay, they're sending them statewide. And he said, if you fall within these parameters, essentially, I'm going to send you an email that you are going home. And for it to be hundreds of missionaries across 2 states, like, it was dead silent. And, I mean, as we know, I got an email from my mission president saying that I was going home. And that was probably one of the most devastating things I've ever experienced in my life. Again, that'll come a different time. I'm trying not to, like, get too much into my mission, but that's, like, when my personal mental health journey began. And I've never been so heartbroken in my life. But I was also so confident in God's plan for me that I was like, okay, this is going to be okay. This is what God needs me to do. So I was obviously miserable and so sad that I was going home, but I was trusting that it was God's plan. I texted the family that I was living with, who had sent me on my mission, and I was like, or I actually called her. I said, hey, I'm coming home. I don't know when, but I'm being sent home because of the pandemic. If you have depression or anything, they're sending you home. And I have that, so they're sending me home. And the mom was really great. She was like, okay, we're ready for you whenever. I think she realized like how difficult this was. And also the world was ending, or so we thought, 2020. But yeah, and no one knew how long we would have, but the transfer was about to end. We were like 3 days from the transfer, and I actually got sent home 3 days later. And the day before, they had bought my ticket and everything and didn't tell me. And the day before, like hours before, 24 hours before, less than that, they were like, Sister Casanova, pack up your stuff. You're going home tomorrow. Your flight's at like 3 p.m. And I was like, okay. And so I'm driving home with my new companion, because we just had transfers, and I was so excited for her to be my companion, and I was so excited to be in a Spanish area, and I was like, oh, I'm going home. So I had her drive because I was sobbing my eyes out, not understanding like what the hell God's plan was and what was going on. And I packed up and I went home the next day, and I landed back in Utah, and I'd never felt so wrong about being somewhere in my life. And God, what I'm trying to say is like basically this begun like this next bout of like a lot of depression. The family that I was living with at the time, there's people that I'm really close to, but they really did not understand mental illness. They did not understand depression. They were very like, you make the best of your situation, and like your happiness or your sadness is a choice. And I had to be quarantined for a few days because I had been out of the state and I had been in the airport. So I was locked in my room by myself for a few days, and I just laid in my bed and I just cried, and I was so miserable. And their dad would come in and he'd be like, have you had water today? Have you brushed your teeth? Have you eaten? And I would just sit there and I would just cry, and I didn't respond to him. And he would come and he'd bring me water and like crackers or whatever and bring me food, and someone else would come check on me, and I'd be on the floor and I'd be crying my eyes out, and they'd be like, are you okay? What's going on? And I just like, I didn't know how to respond. Like, I was so sad. I was so sad. Not only because of my situation, I had worked so hard on my mental health, and to be in a situation where like someone told me that my mental health wasn't positive enough to let me remain in a place where I really wanted to be, a missionary in Iowa, was really heartbreaking. So there was some like situational depression like happening there, but it was also like I had already been struggling with depression. And when I finally like was done quarantine and I could come out, I would sit at the bar in the kitchen and I would cry, and I'd be like, I don't understand why this is happening. Like, I really, truly don't understand why this is my situation. I'm supposed to be a missionary. And bless this family. They didn't know how to help me because I didn't know how to help myself. And I would just be like, not yelled at, but it was very like bold of like, well, you're not on your mission, so you need to like get it together. That's not what's happening. That's not what God's plan is. So like, time for the next thing. And I'm like heartbroken here, and I'm like so sad, and I'm like being told that like I'm not supposed to be on my mission and I need to choose to be happy. And I was like, okay. And I'm like, whatever. Like they're very bold family, and they're very like, make the best of your situations, and I get that, but they also did not understand depression at all. What I was going through was not okay. And also I was in a really toxic situationship at this time. So I was being told, or like I started one like right after this, like probably a month after being home. I got into a relationship with this guy who's very mentally and emotionally and spiritually abusive. He would tell me that, like, if I had more faith in Jesus Christ, I wouldn't be depressed. I fucking wish that was true, because I have a lot of faith in Jesus Christ, and I'm still really depressed. But, sorry you guys have to hear me slurp and cry. That's so embarrassing, but fuck it. So basically I spent, like, this is, like, March to January of 2020. I am miserable. I'm depressed. I am having constant suicidal ideation. I didn't recognize it at the time because I didn't know that that's what it was, but I did not want to be alive. I was very miserable, very sad. I started therapy through the church. They had offered it again because they sent me home. They were like, you get like 7 free sessions through the church. Thanks, 7 sessions. And the counselor that I was meeting with was nice, but like she wasn't very helpful. She was a lot older, and because of the family that I was living with, because they weren't very understanding of mental illness, I did my sessions in my closet in my bedroom so that they wouldn't hear my therapy sessions. Not because it's like I wanted it to be private, but because I was so scared of how they would perceive me during this time. And I feel so, and I'm crying so much because I feel so bad for that version of Mercy. She needed so much love and help, and she was not getting it. I didn't give it to myself. I couldn't be with my friends because of COVID. I couldn't be with my companions, like, who were home, like, people from my mission. I couldn't connect with them very well because of COVID. And the family that I was with just really didn't understand what I was going through, and I didn't understand what I was going through because I was 20. Like, I was 21. Like, I didn't get what was happening. I mean, now that I look back at it, like, maybe I should have because I saw my siblings go through this, but, like, it happening to me is such a different experience. And I remember that year, that Thanksgiving Day, the friend that I had lived with, I was getting ready for the day. Obviously, it's Thanksgiving. Everyone's going to be there celebrating. And COVID kind of had let up. Like, we could go to the movies and, like, see people at this time. But she came to me, and we were sharing a room at this time because, again, everyone came home when the pandemic started. And she was like, I need to talk to you. And I was like, okay. And she was like, I met with a psychic. It's a psychic. I met with a psychic, and she said that I'm surrounded by too much negativity, and that's coming from you, and that your depression is really hurting me. And I feel like you're using depression as an excuse to not move on from the hardships of your mission and having to leave your mission, and being around you is, like, hurting my energy. So my parents are going to let me move back upstairs to the other room because being around you is too hard. And I sat there and I was, like, getting ready in the mirror, and I was like, okay, I understand. And she left. And I'm sure she was like, oh my God, I advocated for myself. I did so great. I wanted to kill myself so deeply in that moment. To be struggling with my mental health so much at that time, and then to have someone who was supposed to be my best friend come up to me and tell me that I was using my depression as an excuse to not move on, and that it was hurting her. I'd never felt so much like a burden and so worthless in my life. So that night, I started looking up apartments. I was going to go to school at UVU. Like, that day, I decided I was going to school at UVU. I was going to look at apartments, and I was going to move out as soon as I could. This family had given me so much. It's not that I'm not grateful for them. They are probably part of the reason that my depression was prolonged, because they were so invalidating of my experience, and they treated me so negatively because of my mental health. And that was, like, the last straw for me of, like, this is not where I'm supposed to be. And that night I signed a lease. I applied for my classes, and I was like, I'm getting the fuck out of here. And I told them the next day, I was like, I'm moving out December, blah, blah, blah. It was, like, right after Christmas, like, before the new year, before the semester started. I was like, I'm moving out. I applied for a job. I'm starting school, such and such. Like, I couldn't start the school for the next semester because it already passed, but I was, like, starting school in the fall. And I was like, and I'm going, and they're like, whoa. And I was like, also, I'm buying a car because I was driving their car. I wanted nothing to do with them. I was so fucking angry and heartbroken at the situation, and they're like, whoa, what's happening? Like, it's like they genuinely had no fucking clue the environment that I was in. And again, they tried their best. It just was not good enough in the slightest. And I moved out, and Emmy, my best friend, ended up coming to Utah too, and we lived super close to each other. And I worked in another residential treatment center, and I fought so hard for my mental health to do and to be better, and I got somewhere good. It was not bad. It was, I still struggled a lot, and I started therapy because I was struggling a lot. I started therapy again. I had stopped with that mission. I only got 7 free sessions. So I applied for insurance to get insurance through the marketplace, and adjusted my meds and started therapy, and I was really loving life again. I was surrounding myself with new people, and I loved my roommates. Again, they're still some of my best friends to this day, and my best friend was living in the state. I could connect. A lot of my mission friends lived in the Provo-Orem area. Got to connect with people from my mission, which meant a lot for me, and I was doing really well. Had a really good time like that spring, summertime. I loved my roommates. They were really great friends. I would go see the family every once in a while, but having the distance was really, really helpful. And just being in therapy and being on adjusted meds was really helpful and really good. And being able to leave the house was so positive. That fall, after our lease ended, I moved in with Emmy and one of the other roommates who I had been living with at the time. And we lived in the dungeon is what we called it, because we lived in a basement that had like no light, and Emmy and I's room, we shared a room, had no windows. It was so super dark. But it was so fun to live with Emmy. We had never been roommates before, and this was like such an exciting time. I was still working residential treatment, and at this point it had gotten really hard. It was really taking a toll on my mental health, and it was just, the management was so horrible. Actually, the school that I worked at is shut down now. It's Provo Canyon School, the Springville location. It's shut down. Paris Hilton did that. I personally don't think it was that bad, but it, like, from what she had experienced, I think they had been in like 2 different managements since then, but it still was not a great place. The management just like didn't care about the kids, and they fucked over us staff so badly, and the kids just didn't get the help that they needed, and that was really weighing on me. And again, I'm working with these girls who are struggling with things that like I was struggling with to an extent. I never told them that I understood what they were going through, because I didn't. Like, I didn't understand the substance abuse and the the intense suicidality, the hallucinations stuff. Like, I never wanted them to feel like I was pretending, but they really struggled, and I was starting to really struggle too. So that fall came, and it was like October. I had still been in therapy for a while, but I was really, really struggling. Something changed, and I was doing like trauma work in therapy, and it had opened my mind to an event that happened in my life when I was younger that I had pushed off and I'd never told anyone that had happened. And this opened the floodgates to the darkest time of my life. I had never contemplated suicide so deeply until October of 2021. I wanted to be dead. I did not see the value in life. I did not want to be alive. I hated work. I hated my friends. I hated breathing. I hated school. Everything was so miserable for me. And similar to like what I said earlier, I feel so sad for this version of myself, because she did not know. She had been doing all the things. I was going to church. I was in therapy. I was taking meds. And I was struggling so much. And I feel so bad for her, because I didn't know how to help her, and she didn't know how to ask for help. And again, I was doing all the things that I should have, but I did not want to be alive. I took like 2 weeks off of work. I told my boss what I was going through. I was like, I need to take time off. I dropped out of school. Those are the 3 W's on my transcript for my bachelor's degree that I'm so pissed off about, but I'm really grateful that I did, because I would have failed the classes anyway. Dropped out of school, took 2 weeks off of work, and then quit immediately after. I was like, I can't do this. Dyed my pink hair black. I had like cutesy pink hair. I dyed it black. And my friends had to essentially put me on suicide watch. If Emmy wasn't home, I went to my friend Hope's house. If I wasn't at Hope's house, I was somewhere else. Like, I could not be alone. I was not allowed to be alone. I genuinely never thought about hurting myself more in my life than during that time. And that was, like, it's so sad to look back on and to talk about, because I just needed help. And, I didn't know how to get it. I didn't know how to ask for it. No one knew how to help me. It was really sad. I was really sad. I remember calling my mom and telling her, because I hadn't talked to her for a while. My mom and I don't like talk all the time. Like, we talk very rarely. And she had called me, or I had called her, and I'm like catching her up, and I was like, hey, I'm really struggling. I was like, I'm having lots of suicidal thoughts. And my mom was like, don't say that. No, don't say that. No, you're not. And I felt so invalidated in that moment. But my mom's trauma with my siblings had come up, and it had really scared her to hear me say that I was struggling with thoughts of suicide. And it was really shitty to have to like comfort her in a time where I was really struggling. But that's essentially like the basis of like all of my conversations that I was having, of like telling people, I'm like, hey, I'm really struggling. I think I want to kill myself. And they're like, no, you don't. Don't say that. Like, don't. I can't handle that. Essentially, they couldn't handle it. So I couldn't have it. And again, because of the people I was around, because of the lack of understanding, the lack of information, it prolonged this experience. Emmy and I had met these 2 guy friends in our ward who were so awesome. I'm still really close friends with one of them. And if I was struggling and I couldn't be with Emmy or I couldn't be with Hope, I would go to their house. And they were really great friends. God really surrounds me with, like, the people that I need. Like, new people that I need when I need it the most. I'm so grateful for these friends to have been living with Emmy at the time. God, guys, I am struggling talking about this. And, it took me probably 6 to 8 months to really get out of this depression. I'd started a new job at another treatment facility that I thought would be better because it was a step up, and I met again one of my really close friends there, so I knew like I needed to go there to meet her. But the night I knew I needed to be fully done with treatment was when there was a girl who tried to throw herself off the balcony. And so we were restraining her, trying to keep her from hurting herself. And she was like, I want to be dead. I don't want to be alive. There's no purpose, blah, blah, blah. And I started crying, and I had to get tapped out. And they're like, Mercy, what's going on? And I was like, I feel the same way. I could not give her one reason why she should be alive. I could not. And I think that's when I knew I needed to be done in treatment, because I was so miserable with my life. I couldn't even help these girls realize that there was like purpose to life and that life is worth living. Like, I did not feel that way. And I actually packed up all my shit and I moved back in with the family that I had lived with after my mission, because I needed a break. I needed to not have to worry about anything. I needed essentially like parents to take care of me. I needed to be out of the dungeon. I dropped out of school. I'd quit my job. Like, I wasn't doing anything. So I moved back in with them for, I think, a month or 2. I think it was only a month. It was a very short period of time. But I felt so sad to say goodbye to this life that I had built, that I'd worked so hard to get to, away from them during what was another really traumatic, hard time. But I did need like more to be around more people, because all my roommates had jobs and were in school, so we couldn't like constantly support each other, and to kind of have like constant adult supervision during a really hard time. And one of my best friends, Josh, was also living at home at the time, so I got to spend a lot of time with him. And my best friend's dad let me do an internship with him. Basically, I wrote one half blog for him for his company, and he just let me shoot the shit. I just needed to be around people. And after a couple months, I got a new job, and again, I established myself and was able to move back and be independent again. But basically, I have gone in cycles like this on and off throughout my life, where a lot of it's situational, but as time has gone on, I have these really big highs and I have these really big lows. This last year, I was diagnosed with chronic depression, which essentially is you spend more than half of the last 2 years depressed. You're chronically depressed rather than major depression. And I've probably spent more than half of the last 6 years depressed than I have not depressed. So, it's not really like an adjustment to diagnosis, but it's just an adjustment to me and my understanding of my body and my mind of like, I can go 2 months. I go in 2-month increments basically of I can live my life and I'm happy and I'm able to find joy, and then I have a dip in my mental health and I struggle getting out of bed. I have chronic fatigue. I have suicidal ideation. I struggle with like constant suicidal, like passive suicidal ideation, which is essentially like I constantly feel like I would rather be dead. Again, this isn't me trying to be like looking for pity or anything, but that's like something that I live with in my head every day of like, even on a good day, like I would be okay if I weren't alive. And I was actually just explaining this to my Cameron parents. I went and visited them like a month ago because I was struggling with my mental health and I needed to be taken care of by my mom and dad. And we were at dinner and I was trying to explain to them, why I was there and stuff. And I was like, I wake up every day, and if I hadn't woken up that day, like I would have been completely fine with it. I struggle seeing the value in life a lot. I'm very susceptible to negative emotion. I'm highly neurotic. And that's just like what it's like to live in my brain every day. So when I have the dip and my mindset's already like pretty negative, pretty pessimistic. And then when I have the dip, it's very intense. And it usually takes me about 2 weeks to notice that it's happening because I'm like always sick. I feel like I'm borderline hypochondriac because I'm always like, something's happening to me. So it takes me a while to realize that like it's my mental health. And again, I'm in therapy. I'm on medication. Spirituality is a very big part of my mental health and taking care of myself. So I do everything that you can imagine that you do. I go to the gym, I work out, I surround myself by people I love, but mental illness is not like a choice. It's not something I can choose. So every couple months, I spend 2 months miserable out of my mind. I don't answer my texts as well. I don't connect with friends, and when I do, I'm worried about being a burden. I spend most of my life feeling like a burden, even though I know I'm so deeply loved and I'm truly the luckiest girl, but my mind tells me that I'm not, and I just have these constant like thoughts of not being good enough and intrusive thoughts, and that's kind of like what it's like to be me. Like, and again, this isn't like for pity or misery. Like, I just want to share, and I want people to understand, and I want people to see that, like, one, this is normal. Like, this is like a very normal reaction. This is a very normal day experience for me. My journey has been like short. It's only been like 6 years since I've like 6, maybe 7, 2019, where like I've started to experience like depression, and it's gotten progressively worse as I've gotten older. One, because the situations I experience as I get older are more, they're deeper, they're heavier experiences, and also like, my genetics. Having all of my siblings and I struggle with some sort of form of mental illness, whether that's depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, full-on psychosis, like anger, PTSD. Like, we have like the DSM-5 just in our blood. But I also want this to be like, to show like I am a very lucky and very vibrant and happy person at times, and I'm very successful, and I love my career. I love working with kids. I love my education. I can't wait to be a therapist. There's still so much good within the bad to experience, and this is like a reminder to myself, but also like a visual to everyone else, that a life with mental illness does not mean a life not lived. I try my hardest to live my life, but every once in a while I need to fall off the grid. Every once in a while I need to be sad, and I need to reconnect, and I need to be taken care of. And I'm so grateful to have parents and friends and family who understand that and sit by me and are patient with me through those times, because it's very hard. I'm very mean already, and so when I'm depressed, I'm even more mean, but I'm so incredibly grateful for people who, I'm never in those situations that that I used to be in, like after my mission, where people invalidate my feelings or don't understand me. And that family has grown so much. They read books and they listen to podcasts to understand my mental illness, because I think it clicked to them that, like, I really am struggling and that, like, I really do need help. So I'm really grateful for the, like, research and stuff that they've done to try to understand me more, and their kids, and just people in general. But I'm so lucky now to be surrounded by so much love, to have so much more understanding of myself. All these years of therapy have changed me so dramatically. I'm such a different person. How I handle my depressive phases now compared to 4 years ago, 1 year ago, 2 years ago are so much better. I have such bad, like, my coping skills are so much stronger, so much more powerful. I have so much more value in myself. I love myself. I see the good that I bring to the world and to the people around me. And that's what I want to offer as a therapist. I want people to know and to see that you can live a full life and be happy as a human being, even with depression, even with anxiety. I don't think there's very many mental illnesses that can completely stop you from being fully happy and finding joy in life. And my goal as a therapist, and also just like as a podcaster and as a human and as a friend and as a human, did I already say this? As a human in the world, like, there's so much value to you as a person, and regardless of what's going on in your mind, you are loved and you are seen. And I'm so grateful to know that for myself, and when I struggle, I'm grateful for the people who remind me of that. So, yeah, that's kind of my story, my mental health journey. That was long and that was a lot, but again, I hope you guys can understand me, or maybe even understand the people in your life a little bit more. Mental illness is not an excuse. It's not a reason to get out of doing things. I promise you that the people in your life, while there may be phases where we prolong it because we're so miserable, it is not a choice to make to be depressed or to be anxious or to have trauma from our past. To live in my body every day is genuinely a hardship that I have to experience, but it's such an incredible blessing that I get to choose that every day, and that I get to fight to be happy and to find the joy in my life. I'm grateful for my spirituality that connects me to my body and gives me a purpose, and I'm also grateful just for such a beautiful world, for the earth, for nature, for, like, humankind, that connects me to people and connects me to myself. I hope we got something from this. I love you guys so much. I see you. I hear you. I'm here for you. Never, ever, ever feel like you can't reach out to me or to someone around you. You are so deeply loved and you have so much value, and I hope you always remember that. Until next time, I'll see you guys. Bye.